So the goal of yoga asana is to bring the mind to a calm state. And every step in that direction of bringing that mind to that calm state, every step is worth it. So you need to watch the mind and see what's going on there, and then refrain from certain actions, certain thoughts, and replace them with more desirable thoughts, leading to more desirable feelings. So basically we're replacing the hyperactivity of the mind or the dullness of the mind. We're replacing both of those with pure cleanliness, sattvic thoughts, that type of thing. So centering yourself, bringing it all back to the heart center, and we call that the tridaya. It's the blossoming of your heart center. So it's from, we talked about it's from here, right here. So,
A little bud, the budding lotus, Anjali Mudra.
Okay, yeah, so when we do Anjali Mudra, taking it down to the heart center. Now it's not having the palms together. The fingers are together, but the palms are apart, like a little lotus bud.
Budding lotus.
Yeah.
Different than namaskara.
Namaste.
Namaskar.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Anjali Mudra.
Yeah. Okay. So, feeling in your heart center a new expansion and getting that real comfort feeling within. Reconnecting with your internal support. You need that internal support before you need to make that new latent impression there. So we have lots of latent impressions from things we've done in our past life, experience we've had, and we need to perhaps, lessen the experience of those negative
tendencies.
latent expressions, and we need to make new latent expressions, and that's what we're doing with our meditation, our slow asana. We're going to come into that new practice and make that stronger so that the other can then become weaker.
To help change our behavioural tendencies for less desirable ones to more desirable, more sattvic.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So once we feel really comfortable, then we can reconnect with that internal support, and we can repeat our practice daily and just feel that like a relationship, a connection with the inner self.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Calming the mind.
Yeah.
Calming the mind games, not getting caught up in them.
And probably now we've been doing that for a couple of weeks now, and are you starting to feel a new sense of calm?
Yeah, really. It feels like there's less mental mess. Being very clear, as I was talking about before, very clear on what I'm working on. There's so many things, so many projects going on. I've planned it all, it's got structure, and I'm just working on some things at a time. And this sort of leads me to multitasking. Multitasking is really, how do you do one thing properly? How do you do one thing properly and move on if you're so busy multitasking? Right? Okay, you go.
Yeah.
Is that mindfulness?
No. So we should try to steer away from multitasking, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like mothers in particular, they're always multitasking, like they don't have a choice, but I think we need to realise that we all have to do some level of multitasking, but we can't be completely mindful. How do you observe the mind and do one thing properly, finish that, and then move on if you're trying to do 3 things at once?
I guess that's the practice. That's bringing the practice into everyday life. Just
be very focused. Have that focus.
Coming back to that focus. And because you've exercised that mental muscle on a daily basis in your meditation, perhaps in the morning, then when things start to get out of hand, well, you can see that, things are starting to get a little bit haywire here. Let's just draw it in. Let's bring it back to the mantra. say the mantra to yourself. By the way, the mantra, Om Surya Ya Namaha. Just saying that to
Om
yourself.
Surya Namaha.
Surya Ya Namaha.
Is that how you pronounce it? Surya.
Yeah. I wrote it
Om
down,
Surya Namaha.
Yeah.
Surya.
Yeah. So yeah, just that on the out breath. It'll slow the out breath for starters, or at least bring you to some, realizing that perhaps my breaths are a little short here. I can only get in the Om on my out breath, so you need to extend it.
Namaha means no mind.
Yeah.
Namaha.
Mm-hmm.
Surya is a form of the Surya is a form of the sun, which is associated with roasting the impurities. They say if it wasn't for the hot sun in India, there would be so much disease and so much. Mr. Mohan did say that. If there wasn't for the hot sun, it helps purify everything. Like it roasts things, it stops diseases, and it breaks down stuff. And I guess it's what the Om Surya Namaha is. It's the
stopping the diseases in the mind.
Yeah, we're going no mind.
Mm-hmm.
Very calm.
Getting
clear
past mind into consciousness, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few notes here. Mr. Mohan said, go and meditate and then just go and relax, forget about it. And I think that was, it was nice. It's like, go and meditate. And meditation is that, the step before meditation is dharana, which is single point of focus, the sixth limb of yoga. And then we move to the seventh limb of yoga, dhyana, which is that single point of focus consistent with that single point of focus in the meditation. And it can be on a beautiful mantra. And they were saying that Indra and A.G. Mohan was saying, mind is song. Mind is song. So match it with a song. Om Surya Namaha. Or just perhaps use the word Namaha.
Yes.
So the realization of our true nature is way beyond space and time of our own nature. There was a lot in there.
Yeah. They said, with the meditation and that type of thing, to start from where you are right now. Mm-hmm. Just strive for a better state of mind more often in your day. And they talked about the concept of dukkha and sukham. Dukkam and sukham. So dukkam means constricted space, so that's how when you feel stressed, you start to get that constricted feeling into the heart center.
Contracted.
Yeah, contracted, yeah.
Scarcity and lack.
Yes, that's right. And then the opposite is sukham.
Abundance.
Expanded, yes. Pleasant feeling.
Yeah.
So basically the idea is to withdraw that sense of the I feeling and then transcend the mind.
Yeah. One really great question that the Mohans answered for us was actually my question. Is the proper way to pronounce Sanskrit, for example, the name of the yoga poses, do we pronounce the A on the end, or do we leave it off? For example, the mountain pose, Tadasan or Tadasana. And Indra did confirm that in the language of Hindi, they actually leave the A off the end, like asan instead of asana. And the proper pronunciation of Sanskrit is to actually pronounce the A on the end. So that was great clarification, because I think a lot of us sort of got together and we've heard quite a few different...
We've heard both, yeah.
I
think in my training it was always done with the A on the end, but since then, I've heard it.
Yeah, I've always heard that... I was told once by a very well-known teacher that...
It was Tadasana.
When it comes to pronouncing the chakras, it's not Muladhara, it's Muladhar.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's confusing.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference, somebody asked a question about the difference between prayer and meditation.
Yes. Yeah.
So prayer is asking, meditation is doing.
Mm. Yes.
You can share that if you like.
I don't really know how to share it.
There's a really good example of the power of words and the power of speech. If you write the words, God is nowhere, on a blackboard, where is spelled W-H-E-R-E. If you actually put no now here and nowhere, they're exactly the same letters, but it means the complete opposite. So now here and nowhere, there's just spaces between the N and the W, or the W and the H, two completely different meanings. So that was a really good example, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we're sort of going into the translation and speaking about the translations and the differences between the Sanskrit language, the Indian Hindi accent, and the different accents as well in English.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of talk about being really careful about your speech, you know, just getting onto the speech part of it. They were saying that, you know, whatever going on in your mind is your internal speech, so of course you need to watch what's going on there. But when you do speak out, well, that's your mind externalizing. So also very important to be careful always of, you know, what comes out of your mouth, because it can be very hurtful, can really, you know...
Absolutely.
Do you remember he spoke about when you get angry? Well, that's when...
Speech is a direct reflection of what's going on in the mind. Oh, I love that about the anger, about the doshas.
Yeah.
That was great. A really good point.
Yeah.
You can talk about that if you like.
What he said about anger was, you know, when you... I wasn't actually thinking of doshas, but I was thinking about when you get angry and you think you're feeling angry. Usually if you're angry, you'll speak out and your voice becomes loud, it becomes really harsh and quite high. He said, when you get angry, go right down with the voice. I am angry.
4 times.
I am angry.
I am angry. I am angry.
No, you do it quietly though, and you say it really low.
Angry.
I am angry. And I am angry. And in the end, you probably just end up laughing at yourself because you realise, you know, it's just words. Yeah.
And there were some really great stories about, real life stories about how it's so much easier to purify and clean the body than what it is to purify and clean the mind. Try and keep the mind clear. The story about the sage who he was walking to the river to bathe every morning. And previously 2 men had a game. They were gambling for money underneath a tree. And they had a squabble because someone was cheating, and then they had an argument. And somebody said, if you can make that sage that we know of, if you can get him angry, you can have all the money. Because I thought, that's going to be a challenge. So that one man from the gambling game hid up on top of the hill, and every time the sage walked past to go to the river to wash...
after he had the bath.
After he went to the river to have a bath and come back, the man would always spit on his head.
Yeah.
And the sage never looked up and acknowledged who it was, and he just kept going back to the river and washing and kept walking back. And the man would spit again on his head, and again he wouldn't look up and see who would spat on his head. He'd keep going back to the river for a bath, which happened several times, and the man was just bewildered. How could he not even look at me? How could he not acknowledge me? So he jumped in front of the sage on his way back from the river and said, you must tell me. So curious. He was very, very curious. How could you not be angry? I have spat on your head. It was very disrespectful, and you didn't even look at me. And the sage said, it's so much easier to clean my body than what it is to clean the mind. And then
So therefore
the man
he didn't dirty his mind with
got
the
down
anger.
on his knees. He was very, very emotional and said, can I please be your student? You have to teach me this. I want to learn to live this way too. Did I tell it right?
I told it perfectly.
I think
It was
you
really good. Yeah.
So, and this is a really great quote. I kind of like all these little relationship quotes.
Yeah.
I think they're fun. You can divorce your partner, but not your mind.
Yeah, Mr. Mohan was a bit of a joker. In fact, he's
Yeah, he
actually
was
written
very
a
funny.
joke book, and yeah, he loved to tell jokes, didn't he? Which really, very often on a very heavy subjects we were talking, and then
Yeah.
he'd break it up with jokes. And
It was really good.
yeah,
Yeah.
he spoke about enlightened beings. For instance, Buddha. And they spoke quite often about a sage called Ramana, and he said, just being in their presence can really rub off on you. You feel something just to be in their presence. Yeah.
That reminds me about the relationship thing as well.
Yeah, go on.
When
Going back
and
to
yeah.
yeah, go on then.
Yeah, and we've all experienced this, I think we all have, we can all admit this. When we've been in the presence of somebody with a very clear, calm mind and they're just radiating peace, it rubs off. And it does. And that's something that if we put in the practice, we, meaning, everyone who has a partner who, if we're on the spiritual path and if we have a partner who isn't on the spiritual path, if we put in the practice, the partners will experience our presence. They will really experience that, and they start to really see with their own two eyes. They see what they believe.
Yeah.
And know it works.
Going back to the speech again, I just seen something here. Speech should be like honey, sweet and smooth. And then they said, well, the tongue, it has two functions. One is to cut the food in half, and the other is to cut your speech in half. So basically they were saying that we should eat less
half of what we do.
and speak less.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
When I came back from the 5 days, I knew that it was really important for me to talk a lot less to one of my really good friends and a business partner, because we just get so creative and we come up with all these creative ideas and what we want to create and do. And I just had to ring her and say, look, I love you so much, but there is so much wasted energy into just talking. We've got to just, it's draining. We're better off just meditating on it seriously.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really nice to what I found was, when we were when we were away and we went through that time of active silence, and I find now that I'm craving now. I try to make that my morning time, getting up early, having that time of active silence, and the same in the evening. Just
it brings about focus and clarity.
It just replaces any unnecessary thought process, because you're not thinking about what you have to say at all.
Here's another funny one about relationships that Mr. Mohan brought up. The fundamental cause of a disturbed mind is expectations, which is so practical and simple, but goes so deep in all of our lives. That is, for me, that's profound, yet so simple and so practical.
Yeah.
All of our relationships, everything we do, our work, our fun time. Mr. Mohan said he was talking about relationships and the struggles with husband and wife, or partners, and he said everyone wants to let go of their partners, but not the possessions they have with them.
That's true.
Yeah.
He also said the husband and wife should be of a like mind and speech, like two sides of a coin. So, yeah, so that they are on the same page, I guess. Yeah.
I must say, I'm very lucky in that department with my partner. He speaks very well, and he hardly speaks at all. I got to accidentally. I kind of make up for it. I try not to, but yeah. So I really, really love this. It's taking it right back to simplicity, taking it instead of, how the mind is always going outside of ourselves, just bring it back. Don't waste times on really big questions and understanding, all the ins and outs and workings of the chakras. It's just why. I mean, it's such a subtle thing. Go back to the yams and niyams. Go back to the five disciplines and the five ethical morals. The first and the second limb of yoga. Like, don't worry about all of the big questions in yoga and understanding, because there's so much. Just bring it back to the
definitely
first
the
and second
yamas
limb.
and niyamas were definitely stressed so many times. How that's just the first step.
And they are.
And simplify it back to those. Are you acting correctly? Are you thinking correctly? Are you?
They create a really solid framework for a balanced life.
Yeah.
Take it from somebody who used to have quite some extremes going on in their life. They really do help. But being honest, bring about some balance. Yeah.
Take it from somebody else who did as well, and still occasionally does. Yeah. So, anything else?
Just going to have a little look through here. Yeah, this is when we want to experience change and bring about change into our life, we have to be prepared to experience discomfort. And this is something we hear quite a lot, but it's nice to hear it from a yoga master. Not that he would call himself a yoga master.
We know that that's for sure. It's strained,
Oh, what I really loved was we're talking about attachment.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, the 5 sources of trouble. Attachment is one of those, and so is ego. And
the kleshas, basically.
Yeah, the kleshas,
yeah.
the 5 sources of trouble. And fear of death is one of those. Ignorance to our true nature. Strong aversions, liking and disliking.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned
attachment,
them all.
and ego, You have,
And
so the first one is the first klesha being that we don't even know what our true self is, that we actually are spirit and
ignorance is the first thing that comes to my mind. Is people think they are their mind and they think their thoughts, and if you believe that, you're going to feel like you're a madman.
That was the first thing that was brought up. You are not your mind. Your mind is an object.
It's a beautiful instrument, that it is not who we are. We have to calm the mind, and then we come back to the all-wise knowing spirit. So going back to Mr. Mohan spoke to the whole room, and there was many people in that room, and he said, all of you are not going to release your ego in this lifetime. Like, basically, to be able to 100% release ego, you basically need a master and live in the Himalayas. Do you remember that? He basically said, and I have actually heard that before as well, that even though we all aim to not be egotistical, it pretty much takes a guru, a master, to be able to knock that out of you.
But he was pretty well not really advocating doing that. He said you need your ego to live life, right?
Yeah.
You need it.
Yeah, I'm sure Krishnamacharya didn't have one, but he had an extremely traditional, saintly life. Yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and he was also saying, I thought this was really great, that we are all attached to something. You have a saint, they might be completely attached to the divine, and yet not attached at all to anything on this world, not on this earthly planet, not to people, not to possessions. And if you have someone who is 100% attached to worldly things, material possessions, other people, they're going to be 100% not attached to the divine. So we're all attached to something.
So it all depends on the different percentages, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really great because he did say, always develop an internal relationship to make you steady that will never leave you.
Yeah.
And so that's where you sort of come back to, well,
that's the meditation practice.
What are you attached to? Are you attached to everything that is tangible? You know, people, your family, material possessions. Because if we are attached to those, obviously we're going to get completely let down. That's sort of how I look at it. If you are attached to the divine, it's never going to leave you. I mean, if you have expectations, well, you might be disturbed. Yeah. Freedom is a byproduct of practice.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Okay. What about the Ayurvedic stuff that we did on the last day? Want to do that now or another time?
I'd really like to talk about the anger.
Anger?
Yeah, the 3 doshas.
Go on then.
Thought this was, and I don't really have anything else to share. So, with the doshas, we've all got the 3 doshas. We've got Vata, Kapha, Pitta. And I won't go too much into detail as to what they are, but just because somebody might be Pitta, which is the sort of generally, very, very generally speaking, they seem to be bigger build. They're quite sort of fiery. They're loud. They can be quite ambitious. They tend to have, you know, oily skin, dark hair, but not limited to that, because it's also physical as well as personality sort of aspects that determine your dosha. And then you've got Vata, which is typically sort of quite a lean, really, really busy person that tends to be a lot of air, and they can be really anxious and stressed a lot. And then you have the Kapha, generally tends to be a bit laid back. They're happy just to spend their life on the lounge, and they'll do something with their life, but you have to kind of, you know, encourage them and push them, and they can be a bit associated with a bit of mucus as well, sort of the health aspects.
That's right.
And Mr. Mohan did say that just because you might be a certain dosha does not mean that you don't experience anger. Just because you're a Pitta doesn't mean that you're going to be more angry. It just means that you digest anger differently. The Kapha person will experience just as much anger as the Pitta, but they're not going to show it on the outside. They're going to bottle it up. And they're going to experience bodily functions and things that are actually differently because of the way they hold it in.
Digestion, probably.
Yeah, they're going to probably get clogged up or something.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Vata personality, who's probably just going to be freaking out, but just because burning people, and I thought this was really, really great, because just because people handle anger differently doesn't mean, just because they're not expressing it outright, doesn't mean that they're not angry.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it.
So I hope you found that helpful, and thanks for watching.